get ready to get started. We want to thank everybody for showing up. We want to thank the Diversity Committee and Balsa, our Balsa president. She did a great job putting this event together. I want to thank the Diversity Committee. We want to thank everybody. So we have Mr. Antavius Weems. He's from Atlanta, Georgia. He's going to give us a great speech, I hope. Yeah, we will. That's it.
I usually get about a 5-10 minute introduction to eat into the time I have to talk. And you just kind of messed up my bar, man. How's everybody? Okay, so I'm a little unique in the way I do this. I'm not your normal lecturer that's going to have you fall asleep, with the exception of the fact that you're eating. I hope you won't fall asleep with food in your mouth with me being here. So my name is Antavius Weems. I am from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. And what's interesting is that, and I was telling somebody that this morning, is that when I first, being from the South, people say that we have a certain way of talking. And when you're from the South, you sometimes have what they call, is it a twang? Is that what I hear it is? A Southern twang, is it? So I don't have that twang. At least not now. I did have it until I went to undergrad at Clark Atlanta University, which is actually in Atlanta, but a majority of the students, believe it or not, are from Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. So I went on campus and I was in Atlanta, I was from home, and I believed that because I was at home that I was in a safe place. And being in a safe place, I walked up to somebody and said, "Hey, Charlotte, how you doing, folks?" And they said, "Oh, say it again." Say it again. I was like, "Hey man, you all right? Everything okay? Everything all right with you?" And they said, "Oh my God, come here. No, listen to him talk, So I began to mask who I was. And I began to mask the way I talked. So by the time I actually graduated from Clark Atlanta University, I began to develop what you hear now. And so then I graduated and I went to law school in Michigan State, and you can imagine that Southern stuff just wasn't going to fly there. So I began to kind of talk like this. But what I learned from that is that people often are more comfortable with the middle of the road. And unfortunately, the middle of the road is not where we always find ourselves. So I want to tell you just a quick story about me and how I came to be. As I stated, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. And I went to high school in Atlanta. Now, I was raised in what was a housing project of the Atlanta area. And I went to high school at the time across town. And certainly Dean would understand this. I went to high school in what an area called Buckhead. Buckhead is a very affluent area of Atlanta. It is a very white area of Atlanta. And I came from a very black area of Atlanta. And now all of Atlanta is black. But interestingly enough, going to Northside High School, when I got over there, it was clear that there were people who didn't want me there. It was clear that there were people who wanted me gone. Not because I didn't fit, not because I wasn't smart, but because of how I looked. So as a result of it, I began to do things like act out a little bit. I would get into a couple fights and things of that nature, all because I was, in my mind, striving for attention. But I had this assistant principal who's a white guy named Leonard Lansett. And Leonard Lansett pulled me into his office and he said to me, and I was 15 years old, and I'll never forget it, and he had a scowl on his face, "You're not gonna make it here. Because you're black, you're probably gonna end up either on drugs or selling it anyway." And I was 15 years old. So imagine a 15-year-old young African-American male who had just met his very first teacher that was a white person. And that was my very first interaction with somebody who did not look like me. He told me that because I was African American, I'd either end up on drugs or selling them. Now before then, all of my teachers, as I stated, were African American women. And this first person who did not look like me tells me that they don't believe in me because of how I look. How do you process that at age 15? What do you do? At age 15, you certainly don't know and have the fortitude to say, oh, I'm gonna prove it wrong. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna study really, really hard. No, I'm gonna tear up your office. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna tear up your office. I'm gonna let you suspend me. And then I'm gonna become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because after I tear up your office, I'm gonna also, oh, I got one. I'm gonna go also, and I'm going to call Georgia Power and have your lights turned off. And I'm going to call Atlanta Gas Light and have your gas turned off. And I'm going to put a code on it. This is the first time I've ever shared this because the statute's offended. And I'm going to put a code on it, and I'm going to say that this should not have been in my name, and I'm putting this code on there because I don't want anybody to be able to call and get it turned on. You must come to the office and get it turned on. And that's exactly what I did. Because I was hurt. Because somebody who should have believed in me the way everybody who I'd encountered before then shunned me, all because of how I looked. So shortly thereafter, the in-school security team came to see me, and they pulled me out and they asked me if I did it. I sure did do it. What you gonna do about it? Because he did this to me. He told me because I was black, I was going to either end up on drugs or selling them. Well, of course, that was no reason for you to do what you did. The recourse was to tell your parents. So there began my interaction and disdain for white men. It began there. So from that point on until I got into college, every white male that I met, I had to challenge. We had to have a contest. I had to show you how much better I was at everything I did than you could ever be. And it began to erode who I was becoming, who I was going to be. And then I went through college at Clark University. And remember, I'm still in Atlanta. And anybody who's been in Atlanta, Atlanta's like Wakanda, all right? Everything is black. Your mayor's black, the doctor's black, the lawyer's black, the police chief is black. Everybody is black in Atlanta. Just like here, everybody is white. So when I got here, just quick side story. So I go to Delta yesterday, and I get on the plane, and I look around, and I said, I don't see one black person on this plane other than a flight attendant. Where am I going? So again, I said, wow, this is the absolute opposite of Atlanta. And I was thinking, how must this feel to people who don't operate in a society where they often see people who don't look like them? This must be what people who are not African American feel like when they're in Atlanta. So I'm in Atlanta, I'll go back to my story. I'm in Atlanta, and in Atlanta, I go through college, and I decide I want to go to Michigan State for law school. I get to Michigan State, and it's like being on the expressway and coming to a red light. Because at Michigan State, there are 56,000 students at that time, and maybe 3,000 of them were African American. So now, mind you, I've set the premise to say that everybody in my social circle were African American. So every time I would see an African American dean, I would just run up to him and say, hey, my name is Antavius. How are you? Can I have your number? I had some real weird glances. Like, no dude, get away from me, right? And then I had this issue where I was in law school and I didn't have all the money to pay for it. And it was at a point where they said, Weems, either you come up with this amount of money or you gotta leave. So I called home. I called every black person I knew, and nobody could help me. And I was sitting outside by the elevator at Michigan State Law School, and this little lady walked up to me, and she was about this tall. And her name was Christine Hammond. And Christine Hammond was the dean's assistant. And she said, baby, what's wrong? And I said, I think I'm gonna have to go back home. And she said, why? And I explained to her what was going on. And she said, come with me. And I went with her. And she sat me down and she talked me through it. And what became very interesting to me was that I realized that this was the very first time that because of my circumstances, I'd opened up to somebody who didn't even look like me. I was 25 years old when I went to law school. And at 25 years old, I had called everybody who looked like me. Nobody could help. But in front of me was a person who looked nothing like me, had none of my experiences, but was willing to not only give me a work-study job, but also make sure that the dean knew who I was, and make sure that I was able to stay in law school. So I started to rethink my positions as it relates to race and relationships. And I started to say, well, if Christine Hammond could believe in me, I probably should rethink this thing a little bit. And then I said, okay, well, as I go through law school, I want to be part of the boss of Black Law Students Association and things of that nature. And I started to kind of get involved. And then I graduated from law school, and this is where the lessons began for me. I went back to Atlanta. And when I got to Atlanta, I decided I wanted to go to a large firm. And I won't call the firm's name. So I go to this large law firm in Atlanta, and I began to practice. And once you become a first-year associate at a large firm, at least at this firm, you had to ask for work. And what that means is that you actually had to go and knock on the partner's door and say, hey, you got anything for me to do? Is there anything I can do for you? And it was me, and then there was, his name was Tyler. His name was Tyler. Me, Tyler, and Shannon. I was an African-American male, Tyler was a white male, and Shannon was a white female. And every time we were assigned to this one partner, and every time I knocked on this partner's door, this partner would say, nah, I don't have anything for you. But I knew that if I didn't make my 2,200 billable hours for the year, what would happen? I'd get fired. So I said, I kept going. Do you have anything for me to do? No, I have anything to do for you. No, you're good. So, what I noticed though, every time I went and knocked on this partner's door, Tyler was in there. And Tyler wasn't talking about work, Tyler was talking about golf. Tyler was showing pictures of his wife and of his kids. So I said, well, maybe I should do that. Remember I had this experience, my eyes were open now. I talked with Chris Hammond, she had opened my world. And I said, well, nah, this had nothing to do with black and white. This is all because they have stuff in common. They play golf. They have kids. I don't have any kids. So I learned to play golf. And then I began to go and try to engage the partner. Let's talk about golf. No, you probably should go try to get some work done. So I said, this is really bothering me. So I went back and I just kept going. And I knocked on this door, and anybody go to a historically black college university? I went to Clark University. Anybody who went to a black college understands homecoming. Homecoming is like, it's like Christmas, all right? So the Friday of homecoming, when you're getting ready to go to the step show, go to the parties, go to the football game that next day, I go and I knock on the partner's door and I say, got anything for me to do? And Tyler's sitting there with them. And he's like, yeah, you know what, there is something I want you to do. I have a hearing this coming Monday. And I need you to do a brief for me. And I talked about homecoming all throughout the whole week. But he wanted to give me some work, and this is one of the first times that he would actually work me. So I said, I'll do it. He said, I have a hearing on Monday morning, Weems. My hearing is at 9 o'clock. I need this stuff. This is very important. I'm on it. He gave me the subject matter, gave me the information. I went out. I called my friends and frat brothers, and I said, I'm not going to be able to make homecoming. I got to work. I got to make this work. So I stayed there through the entire weekend. Probably didn't bathe one of those days. And then Sunday came, and I worked through it. And Monday morning came, and I went to the partner's office, and his secretary was sitting there, and her name was Michelle. And she was sitting there, and I said, Michelle, it's 8:30. I came at 8 o'clock, nobody was here, but you're here at 8:30. Please put this under the partner's door. Put it in his chair. He has a hearing at 9 o'clock. He must have this stuff. It is very important. I worked all weekend. This is a 34-page brief. I know he's gonna need it. I've also put together a synopsis on top of it so that he can understand what exactly it is that he's looking for once he goes through the brief. I've worked really, really hard. And she said, Weems, he's on vacation for 3 weeks. What are you talking about? He doesn't have a hearing. What you mean he don't have a hearing? Somebody has a hearing today. There will be a hearing somewhere today. I have missed my homecoming for this. She said, let me talk with you. And so Michelle took me into a broom closet, and she said, you're being hazed. You're being hazed. No, what do you mean being hazed? No, it's probably just the culture. And she said, and she talked with that southern twang that I like so much. And she said, baby, you're being hazed, baby. And you're gonna either stay and figure it out, or this is not the culture you need to be in. Because once she saw that I got it, that I was in fact being hazed, the look on my face went from excitement of turning this 34-page brief in with a synopsis on top and a table of contents and all this good stuff, it turned to rage. It turned to rage. Because it was clear now that there was nothing that I could do. I learned to play golf. I tried to have conversations with this partner. I had done the work that he wanted me to do. But there was absolutely nothing that I could do to get his confidence. And Michelle told me why. She said when he was in college, he was robbed by 2 African-American men, and he's never let it go. So every African-American male that comes to this firm, he hazes them. And they're either reassigned or they quit. Well, that became a personal challenge for me because you're not gonna run me out, right? So I stayed for a little while, and then eventually I called one of my frat brothers and said, I think I need to leave here because this is not gonna work out. So he got his wish. I left. For then. So I went and I became a prosecutor. And then I received an appointment to become a child advocate attorney. And I'm weaving this stuff in. And as I was a child advocate attorney, my job was to represent the best interests of children that came before the court. And one of my cases that I had, and I told this story, was a CASA. Anybody know what CASA is? Court-appointed special advocates. The court-appointed special advocates is a program of volunteers for people who have children, for people who are the eyes and ears of the court, for juvenile courts, and because the judges can't go out and see every house, the CASAs go out and see the houses. And these are generally people who don't work. So the CASAs in these instances were generally well-to-do socialites, all right? So this time I had a case where there was a young lady whose child was an infant, and for whatever reason this child was in care or was at some point a part of the Department of Family and Children Services, and I had to make a recommendation to the court as to whether or not this child was going to be terminated from her family or whether or not the mother is going to be able to get the child back. the CASA went out to do a home visit. And when she went to the home visit, she handed me the report and she said, I want you to know that I'm recommending that this child be immediately removed from this home. And I said, wow, that's strong. Tell me why. She said, I believe that the mother is practicing witchery and voodoo. I said, oh, okay. Let's talk it through. Did she do a spell on you while you were there? She said, no. And this is not funny, Attorney Weems. This mother is subjecting this child to witchery and voodoo, and you have a duty to remove this child from this home. I said, you're right, but can you tell me what you saw? And she said, I saw above this child, the room that the child sleeps in, above the threshold, there was a sock nailed to the threshold, and inside of that sock was an egg. I said, okay. And she said, I said, well, did you ask what it was? She said, no, I got out of there. I got out. I said, okay. So what else was there? That was enough for me. And not enough for you? Who would do that? I'm well astute. I read. I know what witchery and voodoo looks like. And I said, okay. I said, but you realize that if I submit this to the court, this becomes a part of this mother's permanent record. She could in fact lose her child if the court believes what you said, because you're CASA, you're court-appointed special advocate, and what you say really matters to the court. And she said, oh, absolutely, and I stand by it. And I said, well, do you know that in the Southern community, and especially in the African-American community, that a sock in an egg tapped over the threshold of the door that the child sleeps in is supposed to stop a painful teething? Did anybody in this room know that? Only the black folk. And she said, no, I didn't know that. And she then, instead of wanting to learn more, she became indignant and began to talk about how stupid that was. So, I went into the court. I told the judge that I made a recommendation that the child remain with the mother, but before I did that, I wanted to bring up and present to the court my CASA. And I put her on the stand and I began to ask her questions. And I asked her questions about where she was from, and she said, I'm originally from, I think maybe Boston or something like that, but I've been in Atlanta since 1983, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, what have you done for a living? What have you worked? I don't work. I'm a stay-at-home mother. I've raised 4 children. My children are all college graduates. And where do you live? I live in Buckhead, and I live off of Far Road. And I said, well, where was the child that you went to visit? The child was in Bankhead. And everybody knows the difference between Buckhead and Bankhead. There's a difference between night and day. And what she did not know that I knew was that her husband was the partner at that law firm that I was at. So I began to ask her about her familial experiences. And so tell us who you're married to. My husband is a partner at la 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 and la. And I said, well, so tell the court about your report. And she began to tell the court about her report, and she wanted to leave out the fact that she had saw the egg on the door. And I said, but you said something to me about an egg and a door and a sock. Tell the court about the egg and the door and the sock. And she said, well, just forget about that part. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Because I gave you an opportunity to be educated about your differences. And instead of asking to be educated, you became indignant. You began to call this mother stupid because you simply didn't know or have an understanding of who she was and why she was. And you've taken your familial experiences and your social economic status and how you've been socialized, and you used it against her without even knowing who she was. So now I get to punish you on the stand. And that's what I proceeded to do. And after she came off the stand, she cried and she wanted to report me to the judge, and she wrote a long letter, and she wrote this letter, and then the judge wanted to have a meeting with me. And when the judge said, well, I'm gonna have a meeting with you in the CASA because the CASA is concerned, and we're gonna bring you in, and she said she wants to bring her husband, and I still didn't tell her who I knew who her husband was. And she wanted to bring her husband to, and I said, okay, judge. Game on. So she brought her husband. And they're all sitting there waiting on me. And interestingly enough, my name is Antavius Weems. There's only one Antavius Weems in the world. If you see the name, you gotta remember the name. This dude didn't even click until I walked into the office. So I walk into the office and I say, how you doing, Bob? Or whatever his name was. And he said, don't I know you from somewhere? I said, maybe. Maybe. And we're sitting there talking, and he's like, I know you from somewhere. I know you. And you could tell it was vexing them that he knew me from somewhere. He just couldn't figure out where it was. And from that point, about 10 minutes in, he said, you worked for me. I said, no, I work for the firm that you worked at. And he said to the judge, Your Honor, I believe that he punished my wife because of me. Now, mind you, I've already told you the story about what happened with he and I, but I also told you the story about his wife and what happened with her. How did you get to the conclusion that I punished your wife because of who you are when it was her who said this woman was practicing witchery and voodoo? And when you had the opportunity to talk about diversity, you chose to be indignant. So we went on, and the judge dismissed the complaint or whatever. But I learned from that point on that people are mired in who they are oftentimes because they just don't want to do better. There are two different types of biases, guys. We know this. There's explicit biases, and the explicit biases is just the people who you decide to sit with, people who you decide to have dinner with. I only want to sit with blondes. I only want to sit with brunettes. I only want to go with people who went to the same college I went to. And then there are those implicit biases, those things that are subconscious, those things that operate in the recesses of our minds, but our conscious thoughts will have us believe that we don't have them. Everybody know what an implicit bias is? Everybody understand that each of us have them? Right? Everybody understands that they're not always based on race. Right? Because you can imagine that implicit biases can be exercised by even those who are of a minority race. I can imagine to you that even in the city of Atlanta, that those who don't look like me might imagine that I am in some way prejudiced against them because I don't hang around a whole lot of people who don't look like me in Atlanta. Whereas outside of Atlanta, because I've been off to Los Angeles, I hang around a lot of people who don't look like me in Los Angeles. So when you talk about the implicit and the explicit bias, the thing that you want to always remember is with explicit biases, these are things that you just do because you're comfortable. You're comfortable. What's your name?
Christoph.
Where are you from?
Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Fort Lauderdale, Florida. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
23.
23. Where'd you go undergrad?
Florida State.
Florida State. Come on, bro. I promise I'm not going to do it because you're a big guy. What's your name? Behind you. Oh, striped.
Clark,
Clark, where are you from?
here,
Naples.
well, Fort Myers.
Fort Myers. How old are you?
I'm 37,
Oh, even better. Where'd you go undergrad?
Florida Gulf Coast.
Florida Gulf Coast. Come up for me. What's your first name again? Chris Off. Your friends call you Chris?
Yeah.
I bet. So, what do your friends call you?
Clark.
Clark.
Yeah.
That Clark Kent.
Sometime.
Yeah. Only on those Superman days. So, Clark, do you know Chris?
No,
What year are you?
I'm a 3-0.
You're 3L. What year are you? You're 1L. All right, so as a 1L, that means that you're being worked to, scared to death at this point. And as a 3L, you're just being bored to death. Yes, I've been to law school. So, do you know him? You do not. Have you ever seen him before? You have not. And you went to U of F?
Florida State.
Florida State. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Forgive me. I understand. But I'm so sorry. Florida State. That's how I get with U of M and Michigan State. Trust me. So you went to Florida State.
Yes, sir.
And at Florida State, did you play football?
I did not.
You did not. When you went to Florida Coastal, right?
Florida Gulf Coast.
Florida Gulf Coast. Did you play sports?
I did not.
You did not. So when you were at Florida State, what did you do for recreational activities?
I played basketball. We have IM, so flag football. Play beach volleyball.
So intramurals.
Yeah.
Any intramurals?
Mm-mm.
No intramurals.
I'm an old married guy, so I would just go home and be
But
with
you
the
weren't always an old married guy.
I just graduated 2 years ago.
Okay, all right, that's okay. So what I want to share with you guys is how explicit and implicit bias is, even for somebody who could be further apart, because you all agree these guys could not be further apart, right? There's no reason why they would have anything in common,
They're both law students.
other than the fact that they're both law students. Tell me your name.
Kevin Garza.
Okay, so you're absolutely, other than the fact that they're both law students, but they're certainly in different aspects of their legal careers. I'll even state, because you're going to legal careers. Tell me, which classes are you taking now?
Torts, contracts,
Who do you have for torts?
Professor Murphy.
Professor Murphy. Is Professor Murphy in here? Did you have Professor Murphy?
I did.
So tell me what it was about Professor Murphy that you liked him. This isn't fair. Especially since they made me sit in her class. All right.
Everything.
Okay, I'm not gonna be able to use Professor Murphy stuff. Well, what other class did you have? Do you have now?
Contracts.
Who do you have for contracts?
Tracy, Professor Tracy.
Okay. I'm not putting you on the spot because I want to embarrass you. I just want to ask. What are the elements of a contract?
Offer, acceptance, and consideration.
And consideration. And that's the same way you learn. And that's the same way you learn.
Yes.
Now, what groups are you a part of here at Ave Maria?
The Immigration Law Society,
Immigration Law Society,
the Federalist Society.
Federal Society. Those are very interesting. What groups are you a part of?
None yet.
None yet. Do you have any interest in any groups?
Balsa and the Sports and Entertainment Society.
BALSA and the Sports and Entertainment Network. Now tell me why you are a member of the Immigration Society.
I've done a lot of community work in Immokalee, and I believe that everyone should have a right to try to become a citizen of this country legally.
Okay. So I'm going to stand right here. And you heard what he just said about immigration. And we're not going to get too deep on that, but would you become a member of the Immigration Society based on what he just said?
Yes.
Because what?
Because the idea is something that is also an idea that I share.
The idea is also something that idea that you share. So it is very possible that somebody who's a 1L and somebody who's a 3L, something so simple as just the immigration society is something you all have in common. Now, let me ask you this. Do you know anything about Boston?
No.
That's okay.
No.
That's okay. That's okay. Did you know that white people can be in Boston?
I did.
Okay. And do you have any appreciation for the tenets of Boston and what it stands for?
Absolutely. My very good friend was the president last year of Boston, Michelle Daly.
Perfect. And so, and you want to join Boston.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that before you leave, you can join Boston?
I think it's possible.
Everything's possible.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not joining Boston, baby. So my point is that I'm making is, without explicit biases, if you see these children walking down the street, you obviously would never think that they even be friends. But if you talk to them enough, or if they were to talk to each other, it's very possible that within the first, because I looked at my watch on purpose, within the first 2 minutes and 12 seconds, they had something in common. It really is about a dialogue, but it gets a little deeper. It's about a dialogue of things that make you uncomfortable, things that make you not feel comfortable. One of the things that I always got, and the reason why I chose you, one of the things that I always got when I was on campus at Michigan State University was, what do you all think I got? When people saw me, who didn't look like me.
Play football.
Play sports.
You must be here on football scholarship. Imagine how that made me feel as an African American for someone to immediately think of me, because, and the way you really think about it, they didn't mean it that way. Some of them may have, most of them didn't. But what were they conveying to me when they said to me, you must be here on a football scholarship?
All you do is play sports.
Close.
You weren't there for academics. Yeah, that's.
Who said it? I'm not there for academics. Why wasn't I there for academics? Because clearly I'm not smart enough. I wouldn't be at Michigan State because I was in law school. If I'm at Michigan State, I must be playing sports. How many times have you gotten it?
Since I've been here?
Yeah.
Well, there's no sports here, but I've gotten a sports reference before.
How many times have you gotten it walking down the streets?
A lot.
How does it make you feel?
It's a good question.
Devalued?
I mean, I understand the society that I live in now, so it's one of those things that, fortunately, I had a mother who was able to teach me that and know that it really doesn't mean anything to my person.
To your psyche. Have you gotten it?
No.
No. But you're bigger than him. In stature. When you walk out of the house and you get in the car, let's say we're both in the car, all three of us in the car, and we're riding down the street, but we're in separate cars. Each of us are driving, all right? And we have the steering wheel in our hands. Let's put the steering wheel in our hands. You got the steering wheel? No, because you know that's how you drive. Steering wheel's in your hand, and it's about 9:15 p.m. Yeah, and you're in Naples. Yeah, and you're driving a Mercedes. Yeah, yeah, right? And the police get behind you. What's the first thing you do?
Slow down.
What's the first thing you do?
A little mental freak-up, a little bit.
And you make sure that your hands are on 10 and 2. Because as black men, that's exactly what we're taught. Did that ever cross your mind? because you have the liberty that it doesn't have to. Clark, did you ever know that that was an issue that we deal with as African American men?
I did know that.
Yeah. Because your best friend was the president of Austin.
That's
Right? You made yourself uncomfortable to have those conversations.
Yes, sir.
But most of us don't make ourselves uncomfortable enough to have those conversations. That once you're driving down the street as an African American, if a police officer gets behind you, the first thing you're going to do is make sure your hand is on 10 and 2. And you're not going to take your hand off the steering wheel until the police approach your car. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Police officer, right?
Yes, sir.
So sit down. I want to pick on you a little bit. I'm almost done. I spent 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Oh, I wish I had a little more time. This is because as a police officer who is also an African American male, you can imagine what you've gone through.
Too black to be blue, too blue.
Too black to be blue, too blue to be black. He's standing as a police officer. I'm standing as an African American male prosecutor. So as an African American male prosecutor, I'm often told by the community, I'm a sellout. When I'm prosecuted full time. You're just throwing us in jail. That's all you're doing, is throwing us in jail. Not to mention that you just broke in that woman's house. Not to mention that you just kicked your mama's door in to go steal her TV. Those are the same things that you're getting.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So, but when you're out there policing the streets, what is it that you're getting once you come? Because when you get your uniform on, you're still a black male.
Yes, sir.
So when you're going and they're asking you to come to well, let me ask, I don't want to presume. Have you ever been asked to go to a rally of some sort that you were not comfortable being there as an African American male?
Yes.
Okay, I just not knew what happened. I just wanted to ask. So how do you, as an African American male, who's now a police officer, address that issue?
Follow orders and just go.
Follow orders and just go. But once you go home and you take off that suit, that uniform, that stuff is not digestible.
No.
The stuff that you just saw are people who are calling you names, who are calling other people names who don't have the uniform on just because of the color of their skin. We have to, thank you, we have to learn to make each other uncomfortable in order to address, identify, and remove biases. Because they're real. The days are long gone, people, that you just start with calling somebody the N word or the C word or whatever word they may use of the day. Those days are long gone now. Because we're a melting pot. I look out here and I see an incredible melting pot. Our biases are beyond that of race, but they often start there. So the next time that you see somebody who doesn't look like you and you walk into a room and you're looking to have someplace to sit to listen to a speaker, sit next to the person that doesn't look like you, because if you look around this room, with the exception of Chris, everybody's sitting by somebody who looks like them. Look around. We must begin to make ourselves uncomfortable in order to be able to grow as people. We're all people. So I want to stop there and just want to open up just for a couple of questions, because I know I probably ran over time telling that long story, but I had to get that one out. But I want to open up for any questions about implicit or explicit biases and how they may impact you, even as law students or as lawyers, because I guarantee you, you're going to face this stuff. And you are, as lawyers, are going to be, what I like to say, not leaders of society, you're shapers of societal standards. You shape the societal standard. What is acceptable every law that is challenged and or written was written and or challenged by a lawyer. There's nothing that you can look around and see in front of you that has not been in some way impacted by law. So, any questions? Yes. Oh, now everybody.
How did pursuing a law degree affect the way your family members treated you?
It did impact it. It impacted it greatly because I was the first person in my family to go to college. First person in my family to get a master's degree in social work and clinical therapy. Believe it or not, I was a social worker before I was a lawyer. And then I went to law school. And I'm from Atlanta. And on both sides of my family are also from Atlanta. So what I ended up with was, remember, I was a prosecutor. My first job was a prosecutor. So I got the whole, you think you been to anybody else thing, right? I know y'all got that already. Especially one day, and I'll tell the story because I know this is what Tabitha's going at. One day, I was in court, and I was prosecuting. And the judge was on the bench, and the door opens, and out comes the inmates. And as the inmates were coming out, they all had on orange. Somebody came out, and they was like, "Oh, John, that's my cousin up in the mud. I'm trying to get up out this piece. Oh, John, that's my cousin right there. I'm about to get up out this." Shout it, I'm gone, shout it. I'm out there. I'm out. And I stood there with my whitest voice. And I said, "Excuse me, Your Honor, this is my first cousin. I'm hereby recusing myself from this case." And the judge says, "Okay, Solicitor Weems is recusing himself. Get me another prosecutor." And y'all heard what I said, right? I didn't even say it in Georgia twice. I said, "I'm recusing myself." So they take him to the back. They wait till the prosecutor comes up, and all of a sudden, my phone is laying on the table. It starts. And I was like, "What is going on?" And I have this rule: if my mama called me right now, I'm gonna answer the phone. Whenever my mama called me, I'm going to answer the phone. So I'm looking to my mom. So I say, "Excuse me, Judge, I really have to take this." And I step out, and I was like, "Hello? What in the world is going on down there at that courthouse? Your auntie done called me and said you don't accuse your cousin of something in the middle of the courtroom." I was like, "No, Mama, I recused myself." She's like, "Oh, let me call your auntie back if I have to cuss her out." I was like, of course she understands, but so she calls that dude is not. That was in 2002. That dude does not speak to me to this day. Because he tells everybody in the family that I accused him of something in the middle of the courtroom. But not only does he not speak to me, but to every family member, he goes around, and you'll experience this, and because you will become the family lawyer, the family bank, the family resource, you will become all of those things to your family. And he goes around and tells everybody, don't call him because he ain't gonna help you, and you better not be in his courtroom because he gonna just throw the book at you. He gonna add stuff on and be making stuff up. And then he would have used my name when he got locked up one time. So, does that answer your question? Any other questions, guys? Yes.
Well, when it comes to situations of implicit bias, what are some of the best means to kind of attack that? Because going back of what Chris said about how, like, obviously our parents have taught us to just, this is going to happen, and sometimes you just have to suck it up, but sometimes you can't. So what are, like, some great ways to navigate throughout that?
I'll be honest with you. We are, especially as African Americans, as we grow up, and we are often, we're taught how we are to behave in proper society. Does that make sense? Am I right? We're taught when you go in the store, don't you touch nothing, right? When I leave the house, don't nobody come in, don't nobody go out, right? So we are socialized to be reserved. And you have to come outside of that and be uncomfortable and make yourself uncomfortable. And what does that mean? It means something different to everybody. For you, it very well could mean you're doing what you're doing now. You're sitting next to somebody who doesn't look like you. Right? But you maybe want to have coffee with somebody who's in the Federalist Society. I tried to join the Federalist Society when I was in law school. I did. Probably because Chris Hammond made me lethal. This little white lady gave me all this power, working with the Dean Suite. So I will say to you that you're going to learn your own way. You're going to find your own way. But not only you as an African American person, but you as any person who's in this room who understands. You're going to see people who don't like you just because they don't like you. They're going to not like you because you have long brown hair and you keep doing your neck like this, and that irritates them. No. Don't apologize for being who you are.
I'm sorry for you for getting annoyed.
I'm not getting annoyed.
You just roll with it, you know what I mean?
You just roll with it. But you're going to find that people are going to be annoyed by you. Never apologize for being you. But make yourselves uncomfortable enough to learn from somebody else's experiences. Because I guarantee you, 2 minutes, 12 seconds later, you'll find something in common with them. I guarantee it. In this campus, you're in a safe zone. But I venture to say to you, it's a fake safe zone. I've read. You guys need to make yourselves uncomfortable here. And I'm not saying go out and jump in the water thing, because I understand that's not a good thing to do around these parts. But have conversations, have coffee and conversation. Try it. Bossa, you have a responsibility on this campus. And your responsibility is not only to yourselves, it's to all the students, because when you leave here, these are going to be your colleagues. And as your colleagues, I guarantee you're inextricably tied to each other for the rest of your lives. Whether you like it or not. This has really been fun for me, guys. I really thank you. I swear I had something totally different to talk about. But I started reading and I started asking questions about Ave Maria. And there are some, I'm proud of the school because of the growth that it wants to see itself do. I'm proud of the professors, I'm proud of the deans, I'm proud of the student body, I'm proud of BOSSA, that you all want to grow. That you all want to make yourselves uncomfortable enough to bring Weems here to tell you his stories. Because there are schools who will never invite somebody who looks like me to the campus. Because it makes them too uncomfortable. Thank you.